All right, good morning. Welcome to our November I Am Tech Oregon interview sponsored by First Tech Federal Credit Union. I'm Ruthie, TAO's Marketing and Regional Programs Coordinator, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the moderator for our 2021 I Am Tech Oregon series, which has been awesome. I've gotten the chance to talk to a lot of TAO members from a variety of different roles throughout our region's tech industry. And I'm really excited to talk with today's guest about his transition into the tech industry as well. I have TAO's Kara Toronto here with me today. She's the one running things behind the scenes. She's also, she'll keep things going in the chat. If there are any questions that come up for Shea throughout the event today, you can reach out to Kara or myself, and we'll make sure that those questions get answered at the end. Just a quick couple of things with Zoom. We all know the deal with Zoom by now. You're welcome to join us on camera. We love to see folks in the audience. Everyone's been muted, and just please remain on mute unless you raise your hand or have a question at the end and would like to talk. And yeah, just a reminder that if you have questions for our guests, we'll monitor the chat and we'll make sure the questions get answered during the Q&A. I encourage you to engage with us on social media. I'm the human behind TAO's social media. It's awesome to see takeaways from our events, comments that people have, screenshots, anything that folks post. So you can see all of our handles here, and don't hesitate to reach out. And now it's my pleasure to welcome our November I Am Tech Oregon guest, Shea Washington, who is a sales director at Slalom. So welcome, Shea.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. And so we'll kick it off. As I mentioned, you're a sales director. So I am curious if you can just start us off by sharing a little bit more about yourself and kind of talking through how you found yourself in the career you have today.
Yeah. Shea Washington, sales director at Slalom, focused primarily in our retail vertical. It's been it was an interesting journey to get to where it is that I am now. In college, I wasn't really exactly sure what it is that I want to do. I was playing basketball, and I had a lot of interest and didn't end up actually declaring my major until the middle of my junior year because I was interested in so many things. That was not a fun year and a half to finish college because I had dabbled in so many things for so long. And then continued playing basketball after college. That went well, but eventually ended up getting hurt over in Europe. Ruptured my patella tendon and quickly had to pivot. And thankfully, basketball wasn't my only interest. I was very interested in business and the business of business, but wasn't really sure what entry point I wanted to start with. I started out in consumer finance and worked in that for a few years, about 3 years or so. And that was fine. It was great, but it wasn't something I was passionate about. Moved up to Washington for that work. Our entire division ended up getting shut down, and I moved back down to Portland and moved into commercial insurance and risk management, working with large organizations in that capacity. I was also found out after about 4 years in that industry, I was also not passionate about that work, and ended up making another pivot into professional services here in Portland. And that allowed me to grow my network here locally, which was really great. But it also helped me to further refine, like, what am I actually interested in? What do I want to do? And I'm a naturally curious person, and I also really like people. People are fascinating and interesting in all their backgrounds that help kind of shape who it is that they are. So that was kind of the common thread through those 3 stops. And then I had an opportunity. I reached out to who is now my boss at Slalom for coffee, because I thought, hey, I think we have some mutual clients, and maybe there's an opportunity here to partner. That conversation pivoted about 30 minutes in to her working to get me to come over to Slalom. And I think it was maybe 6 months later, I made the jump to Slalom. And what my interest really was the technology piece. I mentioned super curious, naturally curious, and there's never-ending problems to solve in the space that we work in. And that's how I've landed here and where my interest is, and really excited about staying. Technology continues to evolve. And so I feel like we'll always have work to do.
Yeah, I mentioned this the other day, but what strikes me about your story, and I think, what stands out is that I think so often young people have this idea that you go to college, you graduate from college, and you're supposed to know exactly what your job's going to be, right, for the rest of your life, or at least that's how I felt. Mm-hmm. And then also, so many people are pivoting all the time and kind of dialing it in. You're like, okay, I'm trying this. It's not quite exactly what I want. I'm going to take this. I'm going to leave that and go on to the next thing. But also that just ultimately, for so many of us, finding a job is just based on our network, right? So you reached out to someone that you knew, and all of a sudden she lands you with a job. That's this cool connect into the tech industry, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say about that is each of those pivots, I would say pivot with purpose, and that's what I was at least thinking I was doing in the moment. Thankfully, it worked out, and each pivot was kind of a step closer into the direction that I wanted to go. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was a step closer, ultimately landing here with the work that I am most passionate about.
Yeah. So for those of us who maybe aren't as familiar with what a sales director actually does, can you walk us a little bit through your day-to-day, maybe some of the projects you're working on? Yeah. Someone's interested in getting into a role like this.
Yeah, so Slalom is a consulting firm focused on strategy, technology, and transformation. So those are a bunch of words. What does that actually mean? There's a lot of companies who are focused on modernization efforts. The way we all conduct business and operate, it continues to evolve. There's a lot of complex business problems involved in that. And so people, process, and technology are typically part of the solves. And so we take a consultative approach with our clients, aligning business needs to their outcomes. And it typically involves people, process, or technology. Not always all of those things, but typically one or more. And so my day-to-day is working with our clients to identify, what are you trying to accomplish? For example, we've all been in quarantine for a long time now, and I happen to work in the retail sector, and there was inventory challenges. Inventory allocation, we had a lot of product sitting in brick and mortar stores that were not going to be accessible. What's the strategy here? We can't just sit on this. Do we send it straight to discount stores? Do we find a way to ship this product from the stores? At what margin? And all of the back-end warehouse management and order management systems that need to talk to each other, and back-end ERP systems that need to talk to each other as part of a solution like that. And so that's just one example of some of the problems that we've been tasked with over the last 18 months or so with a few different clients.
Yeah, super interesting. I'm constantly, through this series, but just in general in life, I'm constantly amazed at all of the variety of jobs that exist that I've never even thought of in my entire life. So, I mean, it's awesome because there's so much out there, and also a little overwhelming, but cool. Thanks for the context.
Yeah.
Okay, so this series, as you know, is kind of about identity. It's about, how your identity plays out in your role in tech. And I'm curious, throughout your career journey, have you seen yourself represented among your peers, among leadership? Can you talk a little bit about that experience in your personal career journey?
Yeah, candidly, no. I've not found myself, and I think that was one of the things that made me hesitant to make this pivot. I believe if I would have maybe seen myself more represented earlier, I would have pivoted sooner. But it was definitely a scary thing to do, and it's hard being the only person that kind of looks like you when you walk into a room, and you wonder, what are these people thinking? Is this something that they recognize or acknowledge and has an impact, or am I just one of the team? It's definitely something that's top of mind most days, unfortunately, but I got to say, I'm still happy with the pivot that I made. Our organization is making strides to improve diversity within it, so that people don't necessarily feel that. But it's a challenge. It's not just a challenge here in our office, but across our country.
Yeah. We were in an event last night, our power pairing event for women, and our speaker, Monica, wrote a book called Only One. She's a Black woman and she's a corporate tech exec. And it's just really interesting that like phrase, I'm the only one, how often that comes up for people who don't identify as white who work in tech.
Yeah, it can be tough to aspire to do something new, and especially something new that's challenging if you don't see anyone who looks like you who's done it.
Totally. And you mentioned when we spoke before just about your imposter syndrome and how that's played out. Can you touch on that too?
Yeah, I can touch on it. I could talk all day about.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
yeah, landing at Slalom, I was one super excited. I mean, it's a great organization. I love the people that I work with, the problems that we solve. I work with a ton of super smart and bright people all day long, and learning Slalom, learning the retail practice, becoming much more familiar with technology and the role that it plays in our work. I felt dumb every single day for probably a year and a half, and not a little bit. I felt like I shouldn't be here. How am I going to figure this out? And then, slowly but surely, showing up every day, really ready and willing to do whatever it took to be successful in the role, I found my way. And I think that's, I imagine, probably similar to other people who experience imposter syndrome. You just stick it out and you find the ways to deliver value. Everybody's got different sets of skills and superpowers. So figure out what yours are, and if you don't know what they are, ask your peers, ask your coworkers, ask your colleagues, and then build upon that.
Yeah, I love that. I've had the experience before of being able to ask a coworker. It's like, if you ever are feeling doubts about your ability, just go ask someone that you work with. Like you were saying, like, hey, what do you think I'm good at this job? And someone I spoke to recently was saying that they have a folder on their desktop where every time they get an email or someone makes a comment about something that they've done while at work, they just kind of store it away in this folder. And then when they're having a day when they feel like crap and they're having doubts about their abilities, they open it up and remind themselves of all of the skills they have.
Yeah, that's a good practice.
Yeah. Okay, what do you like best about what you do? What's your favorite thing, or not necessarily about your current role, but your favorite thing about your career so far?
The never-ending challenges and problems that we're solving. I mean, I'm lucky in that I get to work with organizations in our community. So organizations that impact our lives on a daily basis. I mean, the brands that we work with, I typically have on my work uniform because this is a major client that I spend most of my time with. And it's unique to be able to, in previous roles, I didn't have an opportunity to affect change in my community through the organizations that we work with. I definitely do that every single day. And that's the coolest part. I can point to something and say, our team did that. Like we created this, or we changed this. And that, I've always been a fan of landscaping because you get to see the impact right away. Totally. I think the closest thing to technology landscape work, because I get to see the effects of our work and actually touch it or point to it or show it to somebody. And that to me is the coolest thing about the work that we do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just having something that's tangible for sure. Okay, flip side. What's the worst decision you've ever made, or something you regret, something that you would do differently if you could go back?
In my career in general?
Yeah.
I stayed in commercial insurance and risk management for too long, for sure. There was a 2-year stint in there that I knew that I wasn't super happy, but I didn't know exactly what it is that I wanted to do. So I didn't make that jump. I wish I could get those 2 years back because it felt like I really did tread water. In the scheme of things, it was 2 years. It did allow me to continue to build up my network here in Oregon and in the Northwest, which was good. So I took away from it as much as I could. But I should have made that jump sooner. And every once in a while I look back and I'm like, I wish I could get those 2 years back.
Yeah. Was there what in particular do you look back and you know that something specific thing was holding you back? Or was it just kind of a general, you didn't know what you were getting yourself into?
I didn't know what I wanted to get into next. I knew that I knew that I wanted to get into technology, but I didn't know how to make that pivot. I didn't, I wanted to be in wanted to get back into something that was consultative, people focused, problem solving, but I didn't really know like what my entry point was going to be into that kind of world. And I didn't, to your point, like I had no idea what jobs were out there that really the skill sets that I had and the passions can roll them all together and turn it into like this really great opportunity. I just wasn't aware of it at that time.
Yeah. So let's say someone has watched this and they're like, wow, that sounds like an amazing job. I'm really aspiring to do something similar to what Shea does. What do you recommend? How can someone get into a similar role?
Reach out to the people you think are doing the work that you think you want to do and have questions prepared, and be transparent and honest, and be ready to ask like the real questions. I mean, everyone can ask like, tell me about a day in the life. That's great, but like, what is it about that you do during the day that gets you excited? What is it about the work that you do that gets you excited? What don't you like? What are the things that like nobody would think go on in this job that maybe aren't the most fun? You know, and get honest with yourself and and attempt to have those people share some of the tough stuff as well, because no job is perfect. And you figure out like, what am I passionate about? What it is that I want to do? And what am I willing to deal with that allows me to do the thing that I'm most passionate about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just the reach out, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time and buy you coffee? That type of conversation. For sure.
And that is how I landed here. I think we do similar things. There is an opportunity to partner. What is it that you actually do? Like, walk me through it.
Yeah.
You know, and in my case, it worked out well.
Yeah. I always told my students, people love to talk about themselves. If
Yes,
you invite them to a coffee that you pay for and just ask them questions all about themselves, they'll be super into it.
Great.
Great tactic. Okay, so I have just one more question. So I see some questions that have been coming up in the chat, and other folks, if you have them, now your time is coming. But Shea, if you could share one piece of wisdom that's benefited you in your life, in your career, what would it be? What's just one thing that you carry with you?
Gosh, I would say what applies across athletics and work has just been, I've had to just check my ego at the door. If I actually want to get better and improve, I have to be honest about where it is that I am and where it is that I want to go and the steps that need to be taken. Mm-hmm. Acknowledging that I have not arrived, and that there is work to be done every single day. You know, I think there's a saying, rent is due every day, and I gotta do the work to pay the rent every single day in my own development. No one is going to do it for you. If you're lucky, maybe somebody will help you along the way, and there's going to be a couple steps. Check the ego at the door. Be humble. Be willing to be wrong, and then take the leap. Just go for it. Yeah,
I like that. Okay, well, why don't we, so we have a couple questions in the chat. Priyansha, do you want to start us off and unmute and ask Shea your question?
Hey Shea, nice to see you. You're a great talk so far. Really enjoyed it, and a lot of great inputs to take from your life story. My question is, as a sales guy, what do you think is basically the 3 most important skill set that's important? When you want to basically start doing business with an enterprise, or even to maintain your long-term relationship with a company. So what do you think is the top 3 most important skill set that comes in your mind?
Most important skill set. I maintain that I've never sold anything to anyone, even though that is in my title. I think that's probably pretty true still. You know, my job is to understand my client's business. So be genuinely curious, understand what it is that your clients are trying to achieve and the role that you can play in helping them achieve those goals, and be genuine about it. Because if you aren't genuine about it, you're not going to be able to show up the way that you need to show up to build those long-term meaningful relationships, and clients can tell the difference. I don't know if that's the 3 most important things. So that's one. Number 2 is be willing to do the work, do all the things that other people aren't willing to do. That shows up and is evidence over a period of time, and it builds on itself. It definitely builds momentum. And then I would say just pursue the things that you're naturally curious and interested in. The business will find you when you're doing that.
Oh, thank you. That makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
What about you, Victor? I see that there's a question from you in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Shea.
Hi, Victor.
Appreciate you coming on here and talking a little bit about yourself and what you do. So I'm involved quite a bit in looking at the future of technology, and I was wondering if you have any insights into those technologies that you think will be affecting your business or your clients in the near future.
Yeah, the technology landscape continues to evolve every single day. It feels like I'm getting an email that talks about this new niche technology that serves this purpose. But for broad strokes, I would say the cloud and modernization efforts with cloud-first technologies, with cloud-first technologies. That has transformed the way the majority of the business that we work with do operate their core business. And I'm sure everyone has heard it, and it swirls around in emails from cell phone carriers to internet providers, all of that stuff. But the cloud is transforming the way we all do work. And then, as I mentioned, there's a bunch of niche technologies out there. You know, technology when it would land with a broad purpose, and now you're seeing these companies that serve a very specific purpose that impact certain types of businesses and solve very specific problems in the landscape. And it's really cool to see technology evolve in that way.
Awesome, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Do we have any more questions from the audience? People who want to chime in? Kara, I see you came on video.
That's because I want to ask a fellow athlete a question, because I think it's interesting. And Ruthie, you and I talk about this. So Shea, you know, I'm a big runner and run a lot of marathons, and I'm like fairly competitive, which makes me laugh because like I'm definitely not as young as I used to be. But I find myself like drawing a lot of analogies between that passion for athletics and like coaching and training into my professional career. And I'm curious, like the lessons learned from your sports background, like how does that translate? Because we spend a lot of time talking about like K through 12 STEM careers for kids. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes it's difficult to make this, what do they call them now? Like transferable skills relatable. So I'm curious, like the things you learned along your athletic career, how has that helped your professional career in tech and sales?
Yeah, great question. I think that in my role specifically, having that kind of background is super beneficial. Certainly not a requirement, but I see a lot of people who do the work that I do come from that background and be successful. I think there's fundamentals, you know, in athletics, you focus on fundamentals, the things that you need to do every single day that are going to be foundational to your success. You know, in basketball, I don't know how many lay-ins I've shot in my lifetime. It's probably in the millions. And we did it every single day because it was such a core part of what we needed to do. Like people watch the Blazers and you see, you know, 7-foot Yusuf Nurkic miss a layup and you're like, what is happening? You're paid millions of dollars. This should be the very first thing and the minimum that you should be able to deliver. So that's a fundamental. And in my work, the fundamentals are like getting in front of clients, understanding their business, and then helping them align those goals and those outcomes. Like those are the fundamentals and building that muscle up. Next, I would say perseverance. I get told no way more than I get told yes. I mean, it's not even close. But I don't take it personally, and I'm used to being told no, but I want to know why somebody's telling me no. And if you can get used to asking good questions and building that muscle as well, everyone wants to do something. If they're telling you no, they either think that you can't do it, they're already doing it, they think it's going to cost too much, or it's just not a priority. So keep digging and ask thoughtful questions to really uncover what's happening here. And that's a core fundamental piece of the work that I do. So focusing on the fundamentals, persevering, you know, don't get offended if somebody tells you no. Just keep pushing. Get creative.
I love that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My question, Shea, if you're willing to share, is where did you play basketball in Europe?
I was in Amsterdam, France, Italy, Cyprus, and Poland. They were all great places. I'd say my favorite, Amsterdam is a beautiful city, but Cyprus in the middle of the Mediterranean was like, it didn't even feel real. I still remember flying in there. I did step on a couple sea urchins out in the Mediterranean and had to sit poolside with our team doctor to get the barbs pulled out of my foot twice within a couple hours. It's probably my bad. But yeah, those are all the places I was.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Super cool. All right, do we have any other questions from the audience before we wrap things up? We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up there and give folks a couple minutes back with their day. Thank you so much for your time, Shea, and for sharing a little bit more about your career and how you got into the tech industry and what you actually do. Oops, it would help if I didn't go on mute. Just wanted to remind folks about our final I Am Tech Oregon event of 2021. So on December 9th, we have a conversation with Tong Zheng, who's the executive director at Oregon Mesa. I don't think we can see your screen yet, Kara, but hopefully other folks, at least I can't see it. But registration for the event is live on techoregon.org. I know many folks have signed up for the full series, so you'll get a reminder about that coming up next month. And there will also be a registration link that goes out in the feedback survey for today's event. And yeah, thank you again to everyone for joining us. Thank you again to Shea. And I hope that everyone has a great Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Take care.
Bye.